So this is a common coping mode that we're going to find in anxiety, chronic anxiety disorders and mood disorders. And of course, we can all engage in this coping mode. And we're here to talk about the avoidant coping mode. I'm Rita. I'm a clinical psychologist, advanced schema therapist supervisor trainer, and we are going to be looking at the mode model in the next however many series of 7-minute schemas.
Yeah, welcome. I think avoidant protector is a really interesting coping mode, right? So remember, we're thinking about modes that respond to distress by doing different things. And this is a running mode. This mode runs from distress, and it literally runs sometimes. We can find ourselves in situations in life where, it's not safe. And so it makes sense that we would run away from difficult things or not go to things that are dangerous. That makes sense. But this mode, the avoidant protector mode, really kind of takes it to a next level. So it starts to kind of take us away from things that may not be dangerous, but may feel dangerous.
Yeah, and I guess what you're describing, Ruth, is a common feeling associated with this mode is fear. And
Mm.
so, how do I make myself safe from fear and not kind of feel fear or anxiety, again, which is really common in health anxiety, social anxiety, panic disorder? And that's to avoid. I just won't show up. And maybe it's kind of worth talking about the fact that although there are maladaptive elements to it, there's also adaptive aspects to avoiding.
Yeah, that's right. And I guess that's where we're thinking about as clinicians, is this an adaptive response, or is this actually confirming the fear and making it harder? Because when avoidant protector gets going, I don't do things that feel dangerous. And the more I don't do those things, the more dangerous the world feels. So my world gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So say in health anxiety, I might fear having, a bad diagnosis. I might feel like there's things in my body that don't seem right. And so I think if I just don't go to the doctor, if I never get that checked out, then I don't need to find out the bad news. Now, we don't need to go to the doctor for everything. But if I never go to the doctor, if my avoidant protector never lets me get checked out by a professional, that can be a very unhealthy thing.
Yeah, and I guess it could go the other way, of course, that I'm always going to check, which is a different coping mode in itself, and we'll talk about that some other time in terms of overcompensating coping modes. But I guess what you're describing is this idea of, perhaps some vulnerability to harm and kind of not wanting to know, so I'll just avoid. So, it's really common with an avoidant coping mode not wanting to tolerate uncertainty or unpredictability. So I'm just not going to go at all. So with social anxiety, for example, if I go to the party or I go to the thing, I don't want to tolerate the discomfort or possibly being rejected or being seen, and just being seen and the discomfort that goes with that. So I just won't go. But of course, what happens is the anxiety and the fear grows bigger and bigger and bigger and is perpetuated and continues and becomes chronic, and people lose faith in their ability to do these things.
And often what we find is that this mode has been learned at a time when perhaps it actually was really important. So some people with avoidant protector modes were in dangerous situations growing up, and they had to run and get themselves safe. They had to hide, or they had to avoid situations which were dangerous to them. So we want to be thinking about these modes in terms of, where did I learn that? Where did I learn that? And maybe it was helpful back then, but now as an adult, or now as someone with other options, I could do a different response. But this side kind of takes over and keeps me from doing those things that might be helpful.
And Ruth, you always talk about coping modes in terms of a choice versus a have to. And that's where we want to get people to, don't we? That with an avoidant coping mode, it feels like it's a have to. It's the only way that I can survive. It's the only way I can manage these triggering situations. And so part of the work is, well, there's a choice. I don't have to. I can tolerate the feelings and the discomfort that goes with doing the thing that I don't want to do.
And as we do this work in therapy, I find that people do have a bit of more courage. We do it together. We learn how to, where the origin of the mode is and what schemas might be sitting under that mode. As we do some of that work, there's some more courage, some more willingness and ability to take on some of those challenges. And then the exciting thing is that people can actually have moments where their worst fear doesn't come true, where the bad thing doesn't happen. and it gives them an experience of safety that they didn't think possible when they were avoiding everything.
Yeah, and those things kind of end up becoming antidotes, experiential antidotes to the schema and kind of meeting the need rather than that kind of I have to avoid to meet the need. That I can actually start to change this pattern and get the need and start to collect evidence to the contrary.
Yeah, and one thing I guess that is something that I think helps me to change when I want to become a bit avoidant is to start to see that, yeah, in the moment it feels really good, but long term, what's it actually doing? What's the real long term cost of this? And I find for me that's my healthy adult, right? Starting to say, well, you could just not do that assignment, but then how's that going to play out long term if you don't get the degree? Right. And not in a scary way, not in a critical way, but a compassionate way, saying, I want more for myself. I want things in my life. I want relationships in my life. And seeing if I can start to do some more of those approach behaviors rather than just use my old coping mode to keep me safe.
Absolutely, because what ends up happening is you may have anxiety and then its best friend rears its ugly head, depression, because as I don't kind of master these things and, reach my potential and just kind of get a sense of reward in doing those things, then the downside of that is I start to feel quite depressed.
Mm. So we want to encourage therapists that they could be on the lookout for those avoidant coping modes, particularly avoidant protector. That might be the client who maybe doesn't show up for therapy or is finding it really hard to do any of those, behavioral pattern breaking exercises you're doing, and kind of exploring a bit more, where did this come from? What's the origin? And maybe doing some work in therapy to really give a different corrective emotional experience to that client. And that's our 7 minutes, Rita. So thank you for joining us, and we look forward to exploring more of the modes next time.